I mean, 80-20 basically tells us that 80% of what you're doing is a waste of time. 80% of the customers that you're talking to are a waste of time, right?
Yeah.
80% of your inventory is a waste. And the reason is because everybody thinks everybody is their customer.
Yeah.
But the 80-20 being that it's a principle, we understand that that's not true. And as an example, we know that 20% of your customers generate 80% of your revenue. And the real power is that when you start applying it to that, because 80-20 is fractal, and that what that means is 20% of the 20%, which is 4%, generates 80% of the 80% or 64%. So when you start bringing it down, drilling down, the real power is when you get down into those fractal numbers, like applying it to the top 5% or even the top 1% of your customers. What are some of the reasons that we even want to know this? Why do we even want to know who the top 5% or 1% are?
Well, we want to know so we know how to for one, take care of them. So when your top 10% or 5% or 1% of customers, if they're spending 16 times more than your average customer, how are you going to take care of them so they can actually remain a customer? The other reason is to figure out how to find more like them.
Yeah.
Once they're in a group, if they're, thinking about this one customer that we've had, one client that we've had, right? They had 5,000 customers, but their average was $120. But their top 20 people spent 9 times that amount. They spent about $1,000.
Yeah.
And their top couple people spent 25 times that. So if that person called, you should know them by name, and should know how to take care of them. How are you going to, or how's your staff going to take care of them?
Yeah. You start asking questions like, why? Yeah. I mean, and this was a game room, right? I mean, this was,
right.
So, you have to start asking yourself, and that's really what happened with Paul, the customer we're talking about, is he started thinking differently. Why do I have, 10 customers spending $1,000 each?
Mm-hmm.
What's different about them? And I think when he started looking at that, I don't remember the data exactly, but I think there were probably 4 or 5 different sources, of where these customers came from.
Really, it was the 3 main groups that we ended up having, that we changed his marketing, right? Changed his marketing. Basically, he was doing some mass media stuff that didn't make sense. He was promoting things. He was trying to get customers in that he didn't really want as customers after he looked at this, because they were a problem. They didn't spend a lot of money, and they kind of were hard on his staff. So that was an obvious thing to change. Stop marketing to them. Stop having promotions for them. Go after the people that are actually your best customers.
And he actually got more serious about collecting and utilizing email addresses, and starting to send nurturing emails to those top 5% or 1%. Actually, it came out to less than 1% of his customers were his ideal top customers. So yeah, it made him start thinking different and started spending his money differently. It's kind of like we've talked about. We've had restaurants, that we've worked with, that, they'll, the average restaurant, probably their customers come from 10-mile radius.
Yeah.
Well, we've got restaurants that we've seen out there that they'll get on regional radio, so they're going out, 50, maybe 100 miles, and exposing themselves to maybe 500,000 people. They're wasting 99% of their money on people who aren't even going to come to them, don't know who they are, don't know where they are, and aren't going to drive 25, 50, 70 miles to come to their restaurant.
Yeah. How many restaurants are in between them and that restaurant? Probably 1,000.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we talked about this the other day. We were talking, I'm driving home from an errand, and I'm driving up over a viaduct, and here's this billboard for this used car dealer. There was no call to action. There was no, the message, all it said was, hey, we're the family-based used car dealer or whatever. I don't know what that billboard cost, but I know in my day that was a $2,500 a month billboard. Man, what a waste of money. If you want to spend that kind of money, find out who your top customers are. Find out who the 4% are that are spending 16 times the average customer, and start spending your money on those customers instead.
Yeah, so I read an interesting article about fractals, and one way that this author wrote about fractals is like they're Russian nesting dolls, like, and you can kind of view like all your clients, all your customers as the big Russian nesting doll, and you really want to get down to that very little tiny little baby Russian nesting doll. Keep opening that up. That's the ones you really want to figure out, how do I find more like them? Because while they're tiny, they're the ones that are the big player for you. They're providing for your family, for your staff, right? And they're the ones that you really want to go figure out, how do I find, where are they? What category are they maybe? And how do I go find more just like them?
Yeah. So how hard is it for us to go into a business and help them to identify and isolate their top customers?
Well, hopefully, right? Hopefully they have data, right? If you got some data, you need some data, maybe the last year's revenue, who all your customers were, and if you have more than 1 year, that'd be great. Like 3 years would be even better, depending on what you're selling, right? If you're selling a big thing, you might want 3 to 5 years worth of data. But even if it's on a spreadsheet, a basic spreadsheet is all we need to get started, right? With their name, email, right? How much they spent, frequency, recency, and the amount that they spent, right? What am I missing?
So you need the customer's name and their revenue. And I think the last 12 months, really, I mean, if you really want to keep it simple, just keep it simple. Look at the last 12 months and give us that. And all of a sudden, in an Excel spreadsheet, it's extremely easy to categorize it with a push of a button. And you can now see, all right, look at this. Here, I've got 200 customers, 10 of them are generating, 80% of my income. And then you begin to think, as to a question, you begin to think, well, how much of my inventory am I keeping in stock for these other 190 customers? And how, if I eliminated that inventory, if I eliminated worrying about those customers and I eliminated most of that inventory, how much more cash would that put in my pocket that I could spend in other areas? But it's so simple to do. It doesn't take that long. And then to really figure out what other things about your ideal top customers, like we did with Paul and we've done with a number of our customers, is there are other things that you might look at. For example, in a restaurant, it might be, who are your top tippers, right? Or, there's that, what do we call that? The cringe factor.
Yeah, and that's the important thing to think about is this, we talk about restaurants a lot because it's very easy for people to understand, but this works for, manufacturers, this works for anybody, because if you're dealing with people, you're going to have people that are going to be maybe not the best to work with, right? There's lots of examples with people that deal with a big player retail businesses that are not nice to deal with. And are they really worth it? Are they worth the hassle? So
yeah. And actually, this works so much better for higher ticker items. Especially where you have higher gross profit margins, things like manufacturers, machine shops, business to business type works even better, because you're talking about, one customer may be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and your lower customers, your average customers might only be in the thousands of dollars. That's when it really starts to stand out for somebody to say, holy crap, why am I wasting my time over here on these 80%? Yeah, let's start nurturing this 20% or this 5%, and let's start duplicating them. And once you've got that data, as you said, it's very easy to start duplicating, putting a marketing strategy together, a good go-to-market plan, and now start duplicating them. And instead of having to take care of 200 customers for X amount of dollars, you might have to take care of 50 customers for the same amount. And all of a sudden, your profit margins go up because you're not going to have the number of expenses you used to have. You're not going to have the inventory you used to have. You're not going to have to spend the kind of money you used to spend on marketing to get this big wide market. Now you narrow it down. Once you start understanding and applying the 80-20 principle, life just gets so much simpler. Profit margins start to, going up exponentially.